There's a narrative being pushed by the ABC and groups on the left around domestic violence that men are the problem, instead of violence being the problem. Feminists have hijacked this issue to push their radical gender ideologies and are conflating the tragedy of domestic violence with women's rights issues. Why? Because it's emotionally powerful. And from a PR point of view, it works. It's worked for decades. So let's pull the two things apart, shall we? Because that's where they belong, apart. Domestic violence is bad and it is a problem. It is not a gender problem, however. It's not surprising that more men than women are charged and convicted of domestic violence offenders because men are by nature more physical. They cause more harm when they're violent. That's very bad. In fact, it's one of the reasons why male suicide numbers are so high, so much higher, because when men act, they're effective, unfortunately and sadly. But it's the violence, not the gender of the perpetrators, that's the real problem. And that violence is not getting the attention it should, because the feminists are running off with all the funding to provide awareness ad campaigns and services and using it for their own feminist agenda instead of focusing on the real solution of violence prevention. But it gets even worse because this feminist indoctrination of Australians has not only got most of us convinced in this country, not that most domestic abusers are men, which in and of itself is a bit of a problematic statement and greatly oversimplifies things, but they've got us thinking that most men are domestic abusers. And that, folks, is just a bald-faced sexist lie. But, oh, how we have been deeply brainwashed to firmly believe it. An ABC TikTok of a recent rally on domestic violence in Brisbane says it all. Watch this.
I'm 8 and I came here today because I want men to stop killing women because women are important.
She's 8. 8. I'm 8 and I came here today because I want men to stop killing women. What the hell are these sick feminists doing to our kids? This is a child and they're brainwashing her with this kind of sexism and hatred of men at 8.
I'm 8 and I came here today because I want men to stop killing women because women are important.
Stop killing us. Stop using violence against us.
Women don't matter in this country. Our safety doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah. We never hear anything about women's safety on the news.
Almost every woman you know has experienced some type of violence against them.
Yeah, I hate to break it to you, but so is almost every man I know. Why do I get the feeling that the people at this rally are more concerned with hating on men than they are about the real problem of violence? So are statistics suggesting that domestic violence is on the rise? Here's a table from Tasmania showing domestic violence case numbers from 2015 to 2022. If you look at the bottom line there, you'll see the totals, and you'll see a rise from just over 3,200 back in 2015 to just over 4,200. But this table breaks the data down into low, medium, and high impact violence. And the number of high impact cases has dropped by more than a third to just over 200. So the problem is getting better, but the figures are being made to look like it's getting worse. Now, why would anybody want to do that? I mean, who would want to do that, I wonder? Now, let's look at some numbers that you can't fudge. More tragic, but can't be messed with. The number of homicides by gender of victim. The rate of deaths by homicide in Australia has been significantly declining for both genders since the 1980s. Things are actually very good right now, but you'd never know it if you watch ABC News for your idea of truth. Things are getting much better and improving, and that's with all our population increase that we've had. We've still seen the number per 100,000 going down. But there's no funding for government agencies in good news, is there? The parents of that poor 8-year-old girl might want to tell her the good news so she doesn't develop some kind of anxiety disorder or some serious men issues when she grows up. It's rather sick what they're doing to that poor child. Now, remember last year when there was a spike in the number of female homicide victims and every news outlet in Australia was screaming about it? Every politician was all over it, trying to show how much they cared about how male violence was out of control. The truth is, it was a statistical bump, A bad one, but it was a bump. And guess what? We now have a statistical bump in the number of murders and serious violent attacks by women on men going on this year. But you hardly hear anything about that, do you? Let's just take a look, shall we, at all of the things that have been in the news just this month, just in May. Eloisa Gibson, a 36-year-old Toowoomba mother, has been charged with murder after allegedly dousing her children in petrol as they slept and setting them alight. The house fire on May the 7th killed all 3 children and severely burnt her partner. Yet there's been nowhere near the concern or outrage that we heard after the similarly horrific Hannah Clark murders in Brisbane that led to the coercive control laws that were brought in this week. On May the 5th, the bodies of 2 boys aged 6 and 7 were found in their Coonabarabran home. A grandmother in central West New South Wales was arrested after 2 children were found dead during a welfare check. On May 8, Albury District Court was told that 24-year-old Corby Walpole doused Jake Loader, a lifelong friend, in petrol and set him alight, having been angered by a sexist comment. The court was told 55% of Mr. Loader's body was burned. He spent 74 days in a Melbourne burn unit and he underwent 10 surgeries. On May the 9th, a Gold Coast mother of 4 pleaded guilty to 22 offences, most seriously chasing her partner down the street at Ashmore and tried to stab him in the head with a boning knife. On May 7, 60-year-old Anna Maria De Pinto, who allegedly chased and stabbed her husband, saying, quote, "You'll bleed out soon and he needs to die," pleaded guilty to attempted murder in the Adelaide Magistrates Court. A 34-year-old social media influencer was accused with her partner of torturing her baby daughter and taking photos of her in immense distress and pain to elicit donations. On May 7, charges were dropped against her partner, but the child's mother now faces 72 charges. And on May 13, Annette Louise Ruth Hancock, a 56-year-old Tasmanian woman, was found guilty of stabbing her partner to death during a drunken argument inside his Hobart flat 3 years ago. I can't take any more. We're not even halfway through the month, so we'll just stop there. It's all horrific stuff. But where is the outrage? You don't see men's rights groups screaming about it because we know it is not women that are the problem. It's bad people, evil, it's mental illness, and it's circumstances of life. But we're not hijacking the tragedies and horrors of life to promote sexist perceptions of women generally, demonising women, telling 8-year-old boys that they better be careful of all women. This endless sexism from women's groups and radical extremist feminists who've hijacked our bureaucracy, media, schools and universities has simply got to stop. Masculinity is not toxic. The narrative, this narrative, is toxic to young girls, to young boys and to men. And it's toxic to women too. Gen Y and Z are riddled with assumptions about men that are simply false, yet are so deeply ingrained that they've convinced themselves that they're true. It's a very sad state of affairs for our country. Joining me on the show today is Dr. Fiona Gerken from the University of Tasmania. Fiona has spent over 20 years in the community services sector and has managed a range of research projects in family and domestic violence. She's got a specific interest in studying psychopathology of women. Fiona, your PhD was in the psychopathology of women offenders. Is it about time we stop making violence a gender issue and a publicity tool for feminism and a fundraising tool for feminist causes and actually look at the real causes? Because people are dying and this is serious.
Yeah, definitely. So my PhD was particularly around female workplace psychopaths, and surprisingly in the sector that have come after me in Tasmania, and potentially probably some of the people I studied are in that group of people that have come after me. But having moved into the domestic violence space, I really wanted to look at the dark tetrad of behaviours. So psychopathy, Machiavellianism, narcissism and sadism, and have a look at how the interplay between that and domestic violence of both genders. Because there's a lot, especially with psychopathy, it's probably the most dangerous one because they're so remorseless. You know, if we could understand some of those behaviours that we're seeing in domestic violence, we'd be able to better identify and determine what's going to happen next to protect people.
It's a small percentage of the population, right, that have psychopathy. What is that percentage?
It's about 3 to 5%.
Okay, it's not that small. Whoa, okay.
Yeah, so the really, really dark ones, you know, the serial killers are probably about 1%, the really horrible sadistic people, but psychopaths in general are 3 to 5%. And that's a very, it's a lot, I believe it's a lot more than that. And I've seen studies that are as high as 15%. I believe that things like social media are breeding narcissists because you get people that just want attention, and you can pretty much say anything you like online to get attention. So I think we're actually seeing an increase in people with dark traits, in particular
Oh dear.
psychopathy and narcissism.
Okay, and that now you're seeing it. We're not going to get. I don't want to get into gender politics in this discussion. I want to just talk about the problem.
Yep.
So that psychopathy leads to this behaviour in a small minority of those people. So you take that group of psychopaths, you shrink that down to the really dangerous ones, and you get the violence.
Yeah.
What can be done about that? And do we understand the causes?
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of it's entrenched in trauma, but I think a lot of it, I'm starting to think a lot of it's about people wanting power, so people wanting more than they used to, people becoming quite selfish, and it's all about me and what I want. And, if I can paint my partner as a horrible person, I can have full access to the kids, that kind of thing. I think it's the charmingness that's the biggest problem, is people, they find it very, very easy to lie. And this is men and women that can be psychopathic. Very, very easy to lie and have no remorse. They don't care about, okay, well, no, the kids need time with both their parents. They just care about winning. It's all about winning. And whether that's in family court or in the workplace, that can be very, very dangerous when people don't care who they hurt along the way.
It's easy for us people who live a fairly relatively normal life, right? We don't have to do what our police have to do on the front line every day and see the things that our police are seeing, or see the things that community workers like you and professionals are seeing every day, or psychologists, or you guys are dealing with that 1% or that 0.01% of the really, really difficult stuff, the difficult cases in our community. And so you're seeing the impacts and the changes. It must be a bit depressing sometimes just to be constantly surrounded by that. Any insights, anything that you think the other 99% of us need to just wake up to or be more aware of?
Yeah, I think, if someone seems too good to be true, they probably are. That's probably my best advice.
Right.
Because you often find these people are really good at being friends with you. They want to get to know you. They're people that you want to hang around, but really often they'll use that early time to get as much information about you as possible that they can then use against you later. And whether that's in a relationship, in a workplace, or in any interactions, I think I've learned to be a little bit more careful and to watch people's behaviour over time to see whether they're consistent. So I think, that's really the main thing, is just to be mindful of who you're interacting with, and
Don't trust everybody on the first interaction. Don't
that
become
sounds
too
a bit
negative and jaded, but be careful. Just be sensibly careful with people.
Yeah,
Give it time.
yeah, and I think from an organisational perspective, I spoke to a lot of people who wanted to take their own lives as a result of working with a psychopath, and a lot of organisations just left them out to dry. They'd give them a payout and get them to sign a non-disclosure agreement and send them on their way. And I think that's really sad. I think organisations need to do more, certainly in the workplace. But
Now,
I also
I've heard that in the corporate world, psychopaths rise, right? That they have traits that are very appealing to the corporate environment. Walking around saying how fabulous everything's going to be and putting a positive spin. And they're charming and they're charismatic and energetic, but highly manipulative and dark. If you are working with a leader that's like that, what are the things to watch out for?
If they're overly charming to everyone else, but maybe not so nice to you, if they take credit for the work that you've done, if you find they're dishonest or they lie, people who change jobs a lot are sometimes you kind of need to watch out for. If there's people I get concerned about, I might try and talk to someone that they used to work with to see what kind of interactions they have. So these people often move around a lot because they get found out. So that's something you should really look out for. I always encourage people to take a lot of notes on what they're doing. If they start to have concerns, to immediately start making diary entries of the interactions, even small interactions, so that they can use that later if they need to.
Yeah, I know that sort of my experience in senior level in corporate, when I was working in corporate, it was there was awareness around this starting to emerge. And a lot of companies would try and actually find the psychopaths and make sure that they weren't promoting psychopathic behaviour. But psychopaths are very good at hiding things, and as you say, they move around.
Yeah, and certainly something I found was that women in particular are quite dominant in the community sector industry. And what happens is there's early research to suggest that these people go into helping professions on purpose. Women don't seek out the corporate so much because they can control a level of resources and individuals within that helping profession. So you think about a counselling relationship, a counsellor would have that control over the individual and their emotions and helping them, and they get a bit of a, I'm not saying all therapists are all specialists, but I think there is room for a psychopath to be attracted to a helping profession. I mean, look at the example of Lucy Letby in the UK, who was killing babies so that she could be there to support families after she'd killed their baby. So, it's not unwarranted to expect people to not just be in the corporate world, but in the helping profession.
All right. Well, we don't need to be paranoid, but we've got to be a little bit careful, a little bit aware, and just keep an eye out. Because if you're not a psychopath, you don't go around assuming everybody else might be.
No.
Normal people don't walk around thinking there's a lot of good, trusting people out there. And so,
yes, there is. There's a lot of very good people.
Yeah. Thank you, Fiona, for the work that you're doing in Tasmania. That's fantastic. And I hope everything goes well with the university. I'm sure it will. I think universities are starting to come to their senses now and understanding that they need balance and they need different voices, and they need to be a little less buying into some of these neo-Marxist or left-wing ideologies and just be a bit more careful about things.
Yeah.
Great to talk to you. We'd love to have you back on the show sometime.
Awesome. Thanks, Damien. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Fiona Gherkin there from University of Tasmania. We'll be back in a second with some very interesting stuff. Don't go away. I want to tell you about a fantastic initiative that's happening out of Canberra right now. It's called the Awards for Men in Leadership. The awards are given out on International Men's Day, which is November 19. They're designed to combat the increasing denigration of masculinity in our culture and the widespread discrimination against males inside and outside the workplace. The goal is to lift the well-being of boys and men and facilitate healthy collaboration between men and women. The awards for men in leadership are designed to inspire men to make a bigger contribution to family and community and to elevate positive male role models. There's a $10,000 scholarship for studies and professional development, public recognition for the winners, and a year of mentorship and executive coaching for each recipient. It's targeted at young men and middle-aged guys who fought their way up from some other kind of disadvantage. This is the third year of the awards, and it'll be the biggest yet. To find out more, just search up the Awards for Men in Leadership on Facebook. That was a segment from a recent episode of our fortnightly news commentary show, The Other Side, with me, Damien Curry. If you liked it, support us. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube right now so you don't miss a thing. It's totally free. Just click that subscribe button and the little bell. And check out our Other Side Unplugged show too, and join our mission to actually do something and change Aussie media for the better at othersidetv.com.au. That's othersidetv.com.au. Check it out now.